All right. Hey, folks, we are back talking high school football with Dave Fawcett, Inside Nova's sports editor. Hey, Dave, how you doing, sir?
Good afternoon. Good to see you, Trevor.
Good to see you. What do we got in the background there? What champs are those behind you?
Oh, that's my alma mater, Syracuse University, when they won the national men's basketball
Hoops.
championship in 2003. Yep,
There we go.
yep. That's the front
Carmelo,
page. Yes,
Jerry
that was his
Jerry
one and
Ma
only year there. But yes, that's when they
Jerry
won it all. So
McNamara. Oh man, he was a hooper. All right. Well, what we're here to talk about is high school football and another lopsided affair on the scoreboard. Dave, run us through. Specifically, we had a smackdown between Garfield and Colgan. How did that unfold?
yeah, it wasn't the prettiest of games. Both teams combined for 26 penalties for like I think it was 200 yards. So it was not necessarily a fun game to watch, but that notwithstanding, Garfield certainly dominated that game on both sides of the ball. They especially in the second half, they led by one at halftime, then really took control in the second half. Offensively, they've got some really good skill players. The quarterback Troy Hamlin, running backs L.J. Richards, who's actually transferred from Colgan in the offseason to Garfield, and then Warren Freeman. So Richards and Freeman each had two rushing touchdowns. Hamlin had over, I think, 200 yards of total offense. So them being able to move the ball, I think that's certainly their capable. But I think the biggest story really coming out of this game was Garfield's defense. For one thing, they only returned two starters. They had no returning starters in their front seven, and they're facing a 4-0 team that's been averaging 47 points a game. And defensive coordinator Garfield's defensive coordinator Taylor Modlin really deserves a lot of kudos here. He pressured the heck his defense pressured the heck out of Colgan and really did not give the quarterback George Hall the third, who I think had thrown one interception coming into the game, really any opportunity to get that offense into a rhythm. They ended up, I think Colgan turned the ball over four times. Hall threw three interceptions, including one that was returned for a touchdown. Freeman had actually the other two interceptions. So that was really the biggest thing. I don't think, maybe a total surprise. I mean, Modlin's a very good defensive coordinator. He, knows how to dial up a defense, especially to put pressure. But this was really, given the fact that they, were still relatively inexperienced, they really overall, that I think to me was the biggest takeaway.
Yeah, it sounds a bit like a sloppy game between the penalties and the turnovers. And that kind of just goes along with the theme of the week of it not being
Yeah, yeah.
great competitive football for anyone. Man, again, I know I always kind of revert back to Sundays and a couple levels up, but there were so many flags and penalties across all the games in the NFL yesterday, just trickling down to the lower level as well.
Well, and it's one of those things where, I mean, as high school, you'd think, by week six, hey, you're starting to work out some of these kinks, you're kind of
Yeah,
getting in more of a rhythm, and it just never did. And both sides. I mean, it was
yeah,
just whether the flags were justified or not in some cases, but
right. Always the
um,
case.
that's always the case, right? They were thrown, and it really, yeah, it was disrupted the flow for sure. It made for it was a long game, and then made for even a longer one.
Yeah, well, condolences. Well, given the week was not exactly thrilling, we'll just move on to next week and talk about kind of two really big battles we have going on. We have Patriot versus Battlefield, pun unintended, and also what Woodbridge and Forest Park here. What can folks expect out of these?
Well, I'll start with Patriot Battlefield. Usually, this game traditionally has been the regular season finale for both
Right.
teams because they're near each other, big rivals. This is the start of the new 2-year scheduling cycle, so I guess schools chose to mix it up a little bit. So Battlefield will actually finish up with Gainesville, which is another big rival for them. But anyway, so this takes place middle of the season instead of the end, but it's still a big game. You have Battlefield coming off a bye week, and they'll be well rested. Of course, they're 5-0. Patriot has started to really, kind of get into a rhythm. They started off 0-2, could have been 1-1. They lost to a Westfield team in their season opener. They probably should have beaten, and well, they definitely think they should have beaten. And then they end up losing to a very good Colonial Forge team. But what's kind of happening with them is, their defense, coming into the season, everyone knew their defense was solid. They had 8 returning starters. That defense was going to be fine. The biggest question mark for them was going to be on offense because they graduated their starting quarterback, their running back, and their wide receiver. So they had some question marks there. And I think John Finnerty, who's the Patriots head coach, took this opportunity for the first 2 games at least to kind of see what was working offensively and what wasn't as far as personnel goes. And so one of the questions that was answered really came at running quarterback. Excuse me. They started a sophomore the first 2 games. Things weren't going the way that I think they had hoped. So they're now starting a freshman, and he's a true freshman. He's not a reclass kid. He's just turned 14 in August, and he's starting for Patriot, the state's highest classification as a varsity quarterback. And he's playing above his years. He's his name is Anthony Mallory. He's about 5'10", strong right arm. He was a kid. I think they definitely felt like they were going to keep on the varsity, but as a kid, kind of a training and waiting, not someone they were expecting to start this soon. But certainly Sean, like most coaches, wouldn't want to throw a freshman into that situation, but. Anthony's they kind of had a need there, and he's also done really well. So it's going to be an interesting game. I mean, Battlefield's won the last 5 regular season matchups against these 2 teams, but Patriot upset them in the playoffs last year. These are 2 really, really well coached teams. They know each other. Um, so it's going to be, it should be a really, I would think, a really good matchup.
Great. And then we'll talk a little bit about Woodbridge and Forest Park as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about Woodbridge. Certainly their offense has been their offense. I mean, they're just doing what they're doing. They also had a bye week last week, so they'll come in. I think with Forest Park is kind of the more interesting story there as far as the fact that they have a very explosive offense. They have a first-year head coach in Brandon Benson. He's installed a spread there. They've kind of Forest Park in past years under John Robinette was more run heavy. This year, for various reasons, they graduated 22 seniors, their offensive line graduated. So they're taking advantage of these skill kids, and they can really move the ball well. And so it's going to be really interesting to see, how these 2, it could be one of these back and forth games. I mean, they obviously have, good defenses, but the offenses are the ones that are really carrying these teams. And so, we're getting at a point of the year, and this is, we're through week 6. Every game counts, but now even more so as you're kind of vying for one of those 8 spots in the playoffs. And this is Forest Park comes in 4-2, Woodbridge is 4-1. Really, you're looking to make the playoffs. Every win certainly matters, and I think that Forest Park certainly, if they beat Woodbridge Friday, are really going to put themselves in a really good spot to possibly secure one of those 8 spots. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think Forest Park is one of those offenses that's really done very well and could, match up well against, Woodbridge that has its own very explosive offense.
Will we be out at both those games?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Awesome. Very good. Very good. Well, look forward to those photos, to the game recaps. Man, that is yeah, a freshman. When you get up into the higher levels of football, 4 years, 3 years, 4 years isn't a huge difference. But when you're talking about a 14-year-old going up against 17, 18-year-olds, I'm guessing. Hats off. So he's going to be one to watch for the years ahead.
Absolutely.
If he's
Yeah.
coming in now and, playing formidably, man, how exciting for him and for the squad.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, we will, everybody, local high school football fans, that now they know what to watch out for Friday. Um, as you mentioned, we're 6 weeks in here. What kind of storyline, what takeaway has really intrigued you this far in?
I'm not, to a certain extent, I'm not totally surprised the way things have come. Battlefield and Woodbridge. I had predict in my preseason poll had them at 1-2. So I don't,
Yeah.
nothing's really changed there. I think Patriots right there, Garfield. Um, I think, for me, I think Forest Park. I still kind of come back to them a little bit because you look at, on the outside looking in, you got a new head coach. He's young, he's never been a head coach before. Um, they graduate all these kids, they've got a lot of mixing and matching to do. And, they're very easily, they could be, 5-1. So I think they're the team that's really kind of, now I don't know, they're shocked. I mean, because they, Brandon Benson, who's the head coach, knows his personnel well. I don't know that he's shocked, but I think from an outside looking in, going, I don't know how many people thought Forest Park would be 4-2 at this point, and certainly capable of doing more. So I think for me, they're the biggest surprise, and a team that's not necessarily a fluke. I mean, they're not just okay, they've had some wins, but maybe not against great comp. They're very competitive, and I, I think he's done a really good job. He's obviously shown that he's capable of doing this job. You talk about a 14-year-old freshman starting at quarterback. You got a 20, well, almost 27-year old starting, as a first time head coach, but has made the transition well. So I guess for me, that's probably the biggest thing is what they've been able to do so far and the position that they've put themselves in.
Very cool. Yeah, they are. I'm looking over the power ratings right now. They're in at number 7 among the 19 teams in Class 6 Region B football power ratings. We'll go up to them with the top 7 here. As you mentioned, Battlefield, no surprise. Battlefield in at number 1. Colonel Forge, number 2. North Stafford, 3. Independence, 4. Woodbridge, 5. Colgan, 6. And then Forest Park. So that's where things stand through the games this past weekend, through 6 weeks. Um, uh, you feeling good? You in the groove for the high school football season here, Dave?
Oh yeah, because it's always it's going to be interesting. I mean, I think again, Battlefield, the top teams are the top team. I mean, I think I think we can. I feel like you can confidently say Woodbridge, Colonial Forge, North Stafford, and Battlefield are kind of the top four. I know Independence is in there right now, but the other four, those other four spots are going to be up for grabs. And again, it's going to be a lot of jockeying for you could conceivably 6-4 have a winning record and not get in the playoffs, or maybe 7-3. So that's what's going to be really kind of interesting to see who's going to get in there. And I mean, even though Colgan had a tough loss, they're not certainly out of
Right.
they're not out of the running. Garfield has put themselves back into the picture, with the win over Colgan. So there's a lot of stuff that can happen, but it's getting that window's getting tighter and tighter. And so,
As the
it's
season
just
wears on.
yeah, I mean, we're less than a month away from the end of the regular season. And so, it's going to be, it's going to be really, really tight.
Time flies when you're watching football. All right. Well, we will wrap up. Dave, thank you so much. As always, keep up the tremendous work. Guys, thanks for joining us here. Check out InsideNoVa.com for our sports coverage, for our local, regional, community news coverage. We appreciate you reading. We appreciate you sticking with us. Thank you so much. Bye, Dave.
Thank you. Bye bye.